Can you explain the G-force?
As you turn, pull on the stick, it's just that centrifugal force is pulling you down into your seat. Whatever your weight is, you have to times that by the number of G-forces. So right now we're at 1 G, right? Mm-hmm. If we were at 10 Gs, your frame would be carrying 10 times the amount of your body weight. As you're under G, so as I'm pulling out of that turn, you're doing what's called an anti-G straining maneuver, which is you just flex your legs, flex your butt, flex your abdomen, and keep high pressure in your lungs. And then you just take these quick, short, choppy breaths. With the idea is you're forcing all the blood to remain in your brain so you don't lose consciousness and die because you're by yourself.
Wow.
So you got to learn how to fly and fight in that environment.
The physical stuff that you guys deal with inside that cockpit, I had no idea.
The human body is very resilient and it adapts to a lot of different stressors. And we're basically built to like run, jump, lift, hinge, press. There's all these movements that the human body is designed to do. Something it's not designed to do is just be smushed over and over again. Most every fighter pilot ends up with some back and neck issues if they've been in the jet for a period of time. And then now the demands of flying is you're constantly under G. Say your 10-pound helmet under 7 Gs now weighs 70 pounds. Yeah, and if you're flying 20 sorties a month and you've already have back and neck issues and now you're pulling hard on the aircraft off target over and over again, you're looking behind you so you're twisted, and then you're being compressed, it's going to bring out any issues there. What was it like to go from the A-10 to the MQ-9? It was very similar. Just strip away everything that I liked about flying. You don't get to fly. You don't get to shoot the gun. You don't get to smell the gun gas in the cockpit.
Is it that the adrenaline's gone?
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
When you are flying the A-10, just stepping out to the aircraft, like you've got the helmet bag over your shoulder, you see the jets, the sun's beating on your skin, like you just feel like a badass.
Yeah.
You feel like King Kong. And then you go from that to this cave dweller that lives underground. It's like dark and you're staring at computer screens and there's nothing cool about it. There's nothing fun. There's nothing glorious or glamorous. It's just work.
You do not strike me as a skateboarder at all.
I know.
That's crazy. You had kind of a traumatic experience in your skateboarding career.
I got like picked up to do a Levi's commercial.
So you're a model too?
I'm like going out to LA doing Levi's jeans commercials, you know, skateboarding. The first kind of like really weird thing that happened, there's this pro named Mark Gator Rogalski. So he's this huge pro skater. At the time, he was very equivalent to say a Tony Hawk. He was like a hero of mine. One day I get home, I think it was from school. My parents bring me in. They're like, we know you really look up to this guy. He just turned himself in for murder. The short of it was that he was dating this girl and then she kind of blew him off. He went out with her friend for whatever reason, just like flipped out on her. The story is he murdered her with a bike lock and then stuffed her in a surfboard bag and drove her out to the desert and buried her in a shallow grave out there.
Holy shit. What did you find to be the most challenging part of flight school?
I'm going flying a 150 knot prop airplane to flying a supersonic jet with a tiny wing. The syllabus has you soloing in like 6 rides. That entire program of the T-38 was excruciating. I have never felt that level of stress in my life. Just trying to keep up. Any time throughout this process, you're 3 flights away from going home. You fail a ride, you go to a progress check with your flight commander. You pass that ride, continue on in the syllabus. You fail that ride, you're on an elimination ride with your squadron commander. It's a tremendous amount of pressure because you have a bad week and your hopes and dreams are gone.
Damn. Can you talk about some more of these missions?
You see some dark. I'm flying the MQ-9, we get rolled to troops in contact. I find the enemy shooting the Marines, and they're taking pretty effective fire. Get a 9-line, decide to put a Hellfire missile on it. Dust settles, it's just like a freaking pile of body parts. Afterwards, I see this figure come out of the adjacent building, and it looks like an old lady, and she's just moving all the parts around. And I'm thinking she's probably looking to see if there's anyone alive. You just see the actual real impact of war on these people's lives. This woman, these civilians, they're just caught in the crossfire. Just something to think about before we get engaged in these conflicts overseas. Most everything I heard about on the news, I feel like it's a lot of things that are false.
What? You don't believe the news?
I mean, I can't speak to every unmanned engagement that ever existed, but there's this theme of like, oh, they just use unmanned assets to target like civilian weddings. I never saw anything like that. I mean, it was an Air Force unit supporting the guys on the ground. That's what we did.
Another lie from the media.
Whatever fits the narrative at the time is usually what they say.
Do you think we should have been there?
You look at Iraq now, are we better off without Saddam? Strategically, geopolitically. Saddam was basically a counterbalance to Iran, and we let them kind of go at it, right? It would have kept Iran from gaining too much power. Now, basically, Iran controls Iraq. So how can that be seen as a success? Not to mention all the lives lost, and it was sold on completely untrue basis of WMDs. So I think that one's a clear no.
Do you trust our government at all?
No, I think something happens and they just look at it. How can we spin this to further our own interests? So 9/11 happens, then we go into Afghanistan, we go into Iraq. I mean, you look at all the money that was made. Mm-hmm. It's just hard to articulate the level of rage that I have for these people that just lied to us for so long. I mean, we all have friends whose kids grew up without a dad. It's like, why? The strategy that they were employing was going nowhere. Mm-hmm. And then the 4-star general goes and briefs Congress and says everything's great. And then they get that combat command tour, go on, get promoted, and then eventually end up at Raytheon or on the board of some defense contractor. So you just look at it and you realize that there were a lot of interest in that entire war that had nothing to do with what they were telling the public. I couldn't believe how fast they shifted from the global war on terror to Ukraine.
Yeah.
And I know Putin invaded Ukraine, but I also remember when Putin invaded Crimea in 2014, and it was hardly a news cycle. Mm-hmm. I remember thinking like, they're just going to shut down all these contracts. And then it was like clockwork. Then the Ukraine thing hit. And then, of course, this time, unlike 2014, now it's the biggest thing on the news. And it's something that we need to spend hundreds of billions of dollars for. Not to be a cynic, but all those contracts are just keep on rolling.
Ukraine could have been a simple real estate purchase.
Seems like that's not what they wanted.
What do you think is the secret to a successful marriage?
Being married is really easy before you have kids. Introducing kids definitely adds challenges because now all your focus is on my career and then my kids and then my wife is really what was happening. If your wife is unhappy, she might not necessarily tell you, but you can feel it. I think you have to reprioritize. Should be wife first and then kids. Your kids are going to be as happy as possible if you and your wife are getting along.
Yeah.
It's just being deliberate, and I still work at that, but it's like, okay, we're going to go on a date. We're going to spend time with just you and I, no distractions, and try to do that regularly. Just make that time a priority, and then she'll feel that you care about her. Then she'll be happy, and your life will be good.
That's great advice, man.
We carried just your standard 9mm Beretta.
Right on. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to upgrade you. I don't know what you're carrying nowadays, but we'll get into that. But here, I got a buddy over at SIG. His name's Jason. Dude loves pilots. And so I told him you were coming on here, and he was like, oh, you got to present him with this.
You got to be kidding me.
That's the latest and greatest SIG P365 macro.
That's
Legion.
Epic.
So it's all metal. It holds 17+1. It's got that compensator right up top there on the barrel. Keeps the muzzle flip to a minimum. And then they just came out with this brand new optics line. Huge improvement from the previous optics.
Dude, I'm blown away.
Grip that bad boy.
This thing is insane.
That's yours.
I was not expecting anything like that. Tell him I said thank you.
I will. I'll tell him. Let's talk about your first kill in the A-10.
We're supporting this troops in contact up in northeastern Afghanistan. There's like Kiowas. They're tiny little helicopters. The pilots are such badass. They're out of munitions and they're like shooting it out.
Are you serious?
Yeah, M4 out the door. They're like straight up cowboys. Mag dumping out the door at this enemy fighting position. I fixed the enemy position and they just came in, medium altitude, and put a 500-pound bomb and silence the guns.
I'll bet that would do it. How did that feel compared to the drone?
When you're physically there in the firefight, it makes a difference, yeah. You know, you feel like King Kong again. You just have all this firepower at your fingertips.
Have you ever flown a mission where you went Winchester? Winchester, for the audience, means out of ammunition.
I may have gotten pretty close. We're kind of out in the middle of nowhere and we're seeing muzzle flashes from a tree line, but you can't really pinpoint the point of origin. You're just like, I know that that's an enemy position. You might not want to put a bomb there because of collateral damage concerns. But in this case, we're like, let's just strafe the tree line until these guys can break contact and keep moving. And so Wingman and I just did multiple passes on this tree line until pretty quickly they broke contact and blasted out of there. So yeah, this is suppressive fire at this point.